hearing the other panelists, and particularly Dr. Gaur, you set out what the rural ministry is working towards, and smartening up the villages. Personally, I always have this dilemma in my mind: how smart is smart? Because unless you define what is actually smart, and what are the metrics which you use to kind of evaluate that whether you were at a particular position today, and did you become smarter 1 year from now or the year after that. So I'm sure there is, you have some method, but what one would be happier to have is a measurable matrix where each time you look at that dashboard which you indicated, that have I moved an inch forward, and maybe a foot forward, maybe a mile forward. So that is something, because in terms of smartness, we have enough smart people in India. The challenge that we have is you don't implement as well. There is no shortage of ideas, whether it is Swachh Bharat or is Digital India or it is, the rest. But the essence is in how do you measure and implement whatever you intend to do. So with that in mind, there's a huge amount of good work, and particularly the telecom sector, which we represent at COAI. In the last 20 years, if you see, if there has been a huge, almost a magical change, is this device, the mobile device. Where electricity has taken so many hundreds of years to reach the villages, even today, there's a huge effort. But the pace at which the mobile, and, along with the mobile, the internet has permeated into the common man's life is something which is truly empowering. And that is where public policy people and governments are today trying to leverage. And many of us are, our salaries are coming because there's a telecom network there. So Indian telecom operators and the government and the regulator have done a fantastic job in laying out this network. So two things, particularly from a village point of view, which can be leveraged, Dr. Gaur mentioned. So one is the JAM thing, the Jandan Aadhaar and the mobile thing, linking up, okay? What we managed to do is there's a lot of huge debate in society about the linking of Aadhaar to a variety of, requirements that the government intends to deliver. In the telecom sector, because of this JAM thing, we are required now to link every SIM, every mobile number with the Aadhaar. So there are 1.2 billion SIMs. There are about 1 billion Aadhaar. That is, like a social security number, right? So the moment you link them up, then a whole lot of things can happen and get delivered. Now, if you want to deliver services, like you mentioned, the direct benefit transfer scheme. So, ma'am, here the thing is, what you can transfer, what normally, out of the 1 billion, there are only 300 million smartphones, right? So when you want to deliver stuff, and this whole emphasis on an app-based delivery system relies on the internet, or internet-oriented apps, like the Beam, for example, right? So when demonetization happened, we were asked to say, hey, what does your network cover? So we drew out, we have a portal called, the DOT has a portal called tarangsanchar.gov.in, and between the Aadhaar and this Tarang Sanchar, actually these are two international bests. Nowhere in the world do you have a facility of this nature. Aadhaar is where it is a two-way communication between validating the individual. There's no other parallel in the world, and particularly of the scale. The second is you can actually see every base station through which you get a mobile signal on a public domain. That's Tarang Sanchar. So maybe you want to leverage the information or the database which the telecom sector has and link it up to the village. Like you said, you can see the Gram Panchayat or what. You can reach out to the Department of Telecom and say that on your various schemes, because they rely on telecom connectivity, you can actually see whether you've got 2G, 3G or 4G. Because if it is 2G, that means you need to deliver services and design services for the village on a feature phone. If you've got 3G or 4G connectivity, you can deliver services which are oriented with the internet. Because whatever you spoke of, much of it, what I could make out, is internet oriented. Now, so the gap, the good news is 300 million internet users is very good news. That's the size of Europe or the US, right? But the work to be done is for the rest 700 million. That's a big market. So that's good business. So all the companies here, that's scope for business, right? And that is where even we as telecom companies are working to enhance the broadband coverage, right? One of the things which, I'm taking the liberty of rural ministry being here, is since we know the 6 lakh villages, you can profile or, create a picture of a village, and I'm not sure whether every village should have a website or not. I'll be happy, if there is a website, at least at the panchayat level. And to begin with, if the 1 lakh panchayats which the BharatNet has connected today, right? We would want to see a photograph of where that fiber is, which is the room. Where the fiber is, who's the contact person. Because ultimately, if somebody has to go and actually link up and say, hey, who's the guy in this village or in this panchayat where I need to go, connect my wires? I'm not aware. So maybe you could request the Department of Telecom or the BBNL project that, okay, the list of villages which are connected, here is the go-to person that you want to talk to. Because ultimately that's what has to happen, right? So that's something which can be work to do. But leverage this Tarang Sanchar to know what kind of connectivity do you have. So that's one thing. The other thing that one can see is that the telecom network today, the way it looks, out of a total 100% of the BTS is there, almost 40% are 2G and 40% are 4G. 3G is kind of, is going to peter out. Similarly, 2G will also peter out. Depends how much time you have. Now the point is for India, with the Digital India program and all this, if you go travel, see the villages, the question that we have at hand to make a smart village or a smart city, is it going to take us 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? Technology will change, right? Why should not the benefits of technology-based facilities, whether it was smart lighting or it is smart healthcare or education, should it take 5 years to reach there? Why can't? What can we do to enhance the pace of that? That's the question. So the question is, if you have the connectivity, how do you ramp up the speed at which the delivery of these services and then benchmark that? Sometimes one sees responses to the TRAI or the DOT, public consultations. What we are doing right now is there's a public consultation on the national telecom policy. It is due to be announced maybe a few months, maybe by March or so. I have yet to see many of the whether it's the Education Ministry or whether it's the Reserve Bank of India or it is Rural Ministry or the Power Ministry, what are the facilities that you want on ICT which will get delivered if you have connectivity? Sometimes you wonder, Rajan was here, you price spectrum out of the roof. You collect so many levies from the telecom sector. I'm sure he must have mentioned out of every $1 or 1 rupee, 30 rupees goes back to the government. Out of that, the 5 paisa, which goes into the USO fund, you're collecting money from the poor man who has got a telephone connection. You put it into a scheme which takes 10 years to reach that same village. BharatNet is a great program. But the point is, at what pace? Because you've taken money from the public, and if you are not going to give back the infrastructure in good enough time, so you've actually denied that guy the money which he contributed for. And the other thing is, if that same money in public policy terms is left with the telecom providers, they would naturally go and deploy it there. So the cycle by which you collect the money, you put it back, is something we sincerely request, particularly because it is for rural connectivity. So the rural ministry should really think up and work with the Department of Telecom. How do you reduce this cycle? BharatNet program is there. A very important part of this, which I want to really emphasize, is where are all these services in the smart village going to get consumed? Ultimately, it's on your phone. Because what is the form factor of the device over which you're going to use it? So one is the phone itself. The other is all the IoT and M2M stuff, right? So here's another request. You know, I'm really leaning on you, but this is to exchange. The forum is to exchange ideas. So like Ulrich mentioned, he's from a village of 2,000 people. There's another one of 15,000 people. Now, you have the others village, right? You mentioned a model village. So what we really need is, if there is a model village of 1,000 people, and as per definition of a smart village, this is the kind of education, this is the kind of healthcare, this is the kind of, let's say, social welfare or maternity benefits, all these services that you need to deliver, what is the kind of connectivity that you want? So 2,000, normally in terms of planning, 2,000 divided by 4 is the number of households, right? Per household, how many Gbps or Mbps connectivity do you need? Put it up in the public domain, like on your 6 lakh villages. Say that this village will require 2 gig access. Now, to provide that 2 gigabit access, what is the public policy measures that are required to build the infrastructure? Because ultimately, like you have a huge emphasis as part of electrification and modernization, or upgrading the roads, a very important part of this has to be to dovetail the building of the network connectivity infrastructure into anything new that you do. So like, in the smart lighting project, if all the, like NDMC, for example, has got 3,000 electricity poles in Lutyens, Delhi. And their plan is to replace 1,000 poles each year. Now the model of that pole, or the standard of that pole, should integrate fiber connectivity or IoT or M2M or smart lighting. But in the government tender, I'm not sure if the tender specification includes that. There was an NHAI tender which still said that the telecom connectivity should be over GSM. GSM or 2G will peter out. So why would a tender which requires me to provide or fulfill that service for another 10 years continue to be on a 2G network? So the point is that the user ministries really need to put up their demand, because if it is your KPI, your KRA, that depends on network connectivity, why would the same government price the spectrum so high? You ask, give me lower cost 700 megahertz spectrum. 700 megahertz is 4 times the price, so it didn't get sold in the auction. So who gets affected? The rural ministry, the health ministry, the education ministry. But did you ask for it? So because of the need to enhance connectivity, the different users must demand what you want to deliver your service, because it's dependent on connectivity. Right? Another very interesting article that I read a couple of days back is the Niti Aayog, that's our planning people, want to publish a competitiveness index of states, which is very, very nice. Recently we've been seeing amazing Bengal and shining Haryana, or whatever, best Bangalore or Karnataka. Out there, when you publish along with the others a competition as to what kind of information highway, like the Prime Minister calls it highways, what kind of network connectivity is available in my state, which makes me more competitive, which enables me to deliver better services to my people, also incentivizes investments to come and set up business. In fact, the TRAI is really keen on this, but if different ministries also say that, okay, let's do a network readiness index, which is based on a variety of parameters like the INSEAD or the ICT network readiness index, takes into account, digital literacy, electricity, education, and a variety of parameters to say, okay, where do you stand? So that's something which really would be helpful, that if there's a competitiveness index. For example, we were in conversation with Haryana. So what Haryana had offered, that all panchayat land, for folks who are visiting, panchayat land is like village commons. So if you have village commons, the land available with the village commons could be offered to set up your mobile tower. So some states are doing that, but if that is a push with the Panchayati Raj Ministry or the Rural Ministry saying, and there is a Gazette of India notification on ROW rules. So you know, the public policy guidelines are available. It's just that in the states or in the local municipalities, they need to adopt it. Once you adopt it, our ability to develop the smart to the smartest to the smartest, for the villages will certainly get a leg up, and particularly in the time that is available. Because, if you wait for another 10 years for 50% of your villages, it may take a bit longer. And last but not the least, I'd just like to emphasize that there's a huge amount of data that's already available. There's a large amount of data that's available with telecom companies particularly, and even in the government repository. So one of the fundamental things which gets a village or a citizen living in a village is his land holding, which I'm told is digitized most of the places. So is there a case, which I think there is a strong case, to use blockchain technology to, link up all your land base? And with that, because any loan given to an individual or otherwise is linked on, your ability to repay or your identity, and much of the identity also flows from what your land holding is. So blockchain is a technology which I think we should leverage on and leapfrog going ahead. And the last part is logistics. If you want to deliver, let's say, medicine, or, we talk very often about a doctor in an urban area trying to extend and, provide medical advice or service in a rural area. So what we heard at one of the healthcare thing is, the good doctor or the specialist doctor can over a screen, or maybe, even using remote surgical tools, right? The challenge is in delivery of the medicine. You do not have a local delivery of that kind of medicine at the village level. So here's my second suggestion. Is there a case for using drones more extensively as a logistics delivery piece? Right? Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It was nice being here.